Welcome to a special edition of the Volunteer and Combination Officer Section webinar series. Today, you're in for a treat as we have a topic that is hopefully near and dear to all of us, and that is what's going on in Washington, D.C. that's impacting the fire service. We thank you for attending, and we hope that you will share the recorded version around your station or with other fire chiefs who maybe couldn't make it on a Friday morning. Our speaker today, really probably shouldn't say speaker because I'm going to facilitate the conversation. We're going to have a discussion about the topics and issues that are up there. Is Ken LaSala. I'll give him a chance to introduce himself, but I've known him for probably all 30 years. And I will say, he's very, I don't know if shy is the word, but he's very reserved. And sometimes you got to sort of pull it out of him. But he is so knowledgeable in the topics and what goes on in the federal government, and I look forward to his answering our questions. We do hope the National Firefighter Cancer Registry gets restored, but when it does, we want you to get registered. We've got to have data to show that cancer impacts firefighters more than just what we say emotionally. I encourage you to go to the 40plusfire.com website and download some of the resources there. This is Billy Goldfeder, a prostate cancer survivor. And, we know how scary going into a basement fire is or a fifth floor of a tenement. And we also know how scary cancer is. And it can be reduced, the exposure to carcinogens. So encourage you to go there. If you've never attended Symposium in the Sun, the VCOS's premier education opportunity, get ready. Start getting your plans laid, figuring out your budget, because it comes up again in November of this year. We've been doing it for 25 years. We have not consecutively because we took the year of COVID off. So this is our 25th presentation, and it sells out. And it usually sells out about 2 months before. So if you've not made a decision by October 1st or by September 1st, you might not be able to get a seat. We encourage you to look at other resources within the International Association of Fire Chiefs. Workforce Solutions is one that has lots of online virtual training, just like this program here today. Workforce Solutions also offers many in-person presentations. And so again, we encourage you to look to that program and see what might help you. VCOS kicked off a pilot program on critical thinking. One of the things that we talked about was we have the logo, VCOS Leaders in Critical Thinking, but what does that mean? Well, we all know that critical thinking is something that maybe we don't do very often and maybe we don't do very well. So we've started a program. Hopefully it will get, the first weekend was successful. It is 3 weekend programs spread out over a 12-month period. And so hopefully you'll look forward to seeing some more about that. VCOS has several in-person education programs. One of them that I know it's not called labor management, but that's what it is. It's a management labor collaborative approach to how solving problems within an organization. And the VCOS would be glad to bring that to you. That is a class that costs money. We don't do that class for free because it takes quite a bit of resources in order to do that. Beyond Hoses and Helmets is about recruitment and retention. That class can be done and it can be sponsored by the VCOS and local sponsors, but that is available as well. So we encourage you to go look for that. Some of the other things that VCOS doing, I'm not going to read that stuff to you. I will just mention the fact that we do have a great relationship with the National Volunteer Fire Council, both, and not just a one-way relationship. It is a two-way relationship where we share resources with each other, and there are no secrets to what they're doing or what we're doing. So, with that said, it's now for me time to turn it over to Ken LaSala and let him introduce himself, and then we'll get into the topics to discuss today. Ken?
Thanks, Chief Buckman. I appreciate your time today. It's really an honor and an opportunity to be able to meet with you and talk to you and your listeners about what's going on here in Washington. Just a couple of quick things. The IFC, we've been active in DC for years. We are a 501c3 organization, so we do not engage in any political activity. We don't endorse people. We don't have a PAC. We don't do fundraisers. We don't make political contributions. Our job really is just to educate the decision makers in Congress and in Washington, D.C. and the executive branch about what fire chiefs need in order to be able to do their jobs. So obviously, we're always a very active, advocating for the National Fire Academy, the U.S. Fire Administration, Fire and Safer Grant Program, and a lot of programs we'll be talking about here today. So, I've been with the IFC now for about 20 years, and, we see new administrations come and go, and obviously this one's a lot more aggressive, I think, than probably a lot of other ones have been in the past. It's had some ramifications for the fire service. And, I appreciate the opportunity today to chat with you and just update you what's going on. And literally things change by the minute. So, I'll let you know exactly what's going on at this moment. We can kind of go from there.
Thanks, Ken. And I will tell you that the one thing I want to make sure everybody understands today, we're not here to discuss politics. We're not here to discuss whether the things that is being done in Washington is right or wrong. We're here to inform you and hopefully motivate you to get involved, to get engaged, to make phone calls, to write emails, and make contact with your national representatives. So with that, Ken, how do we get into the situation we're in today where we have what's called executive orders? What are executive orders and how do they work?
Okay. Yeah. Sorry for giving everyone a little bit of a high school civics exam, but this is all ties in together. Under the Constitution, there's three major branches of government. There's the legislative branch, the executive branch, and the judiciary branch. Congress passes the laws as we know them. And they're the ones who also, in the House of Representatives, they actually start the process and originate all the funding bills. So basically, Congress passed the laws that create programs like USFA and the National Fire Academy and the Fire and Safer Grant programs. And then every year they have annual appropriations where they fund them. Okay, so once Congress gets done passing the law, it goes over to the executive branch. That's the president. The president can then basically set direction for how he's going to be implementing some of these programs. And there's two ways you can do it. One is the regulations, which we're all aware of, like the OSHA regulation, the Emergency Response Standard. And that's actually governed under the Administrative Procedures Act. And there's a whole process about taking comments and public comments and going through all these reviews. But then also the president can actually issue an executive order. And what that does, it covers like the whole government, or maybe focus on specific programs. And again, it's not a law. However, it does have for the executive branch the force of law. Basically, it's like your boss telling you, like, hey, I really want you to focus on X, Y, and Z. Here's my initiative, and here's how I want you to do it. So the executive orders, they do for the agencies basically act as a force of law. Congress, they're not actual laws in statute. Congress can at times pass new laws to try to influence the executive orders, but there's always some tension between an executive order and then a real law that's in the statute books. And what you're seeing now is that basically President Trump and his administration spent some quality time in the 4 years he was out of power, figuring out exactly what they were going to do when he came back. And pretty much every day he's issuing a new executive order over a whole bunch of different issues, everything which you guys are aware, from DEI training and things like that, to I think he actually banned paper straws, to even looking into like how just yesterday he issued executive orders affecting like the Smithsonian museums, and then also trying to clean up DC and address the crime and homeless problem, and even some of the architecture in DC. So what you're seeing now is some tension in the courts as the president issues executive orders, and the executive agencies start trying to match these executive orders. There is tension when the Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency, which is not a real agency. If anything, it's actually something that was created as a part of the executive branch. But as it goes through and starts doing things and limiting programs and laying people off, Congress says, well, hey, we appropriated this money. And what you see is some of the affected groups, either federal workers or even people who are supposed to receive grants, are now going to courts, asking them to kind of referee between congressional direction and what the president's been doing with his executive orders. So we can go into more detail. Sorry for getting a little bit technical early in the morning, but that's kind of what this whole thing is going to be about for the next couple of years.
Well, and executive orders, probably not the right word, may not be, creates tension, but it creates conflict between agencies, between the three branches of government. And so that's where the arguments become public, so to speak. And everybody has certain authorities, and under the Constitution, that's what sometimes we have to look back at and say, oh, what does the Constitution give us guidance for? So, all right. We do have chat opportunities. If you go to the chat, ask a question, or you want something else explained, we'll try to do that for you. Sherry and I are monitoring the chat while Ken's doing his talk. So, well, Ken, probably the most important federal government program for many fire chiefs is the AFG program. So maybe just explain a little bit about the AFG real quickly, and then how do we see that getting restored, or do we see that getting restored?
Okay. Actually, pre 9/11, Congress created the Assistance to Firefighters Grant Program, which was to fund equipment and training. And in the original bill, it actually said also staffing for fire departments. It also created the Fire Prevention and Safety Grants, which were to fund fire prevention programs and also fund research projects. I know, Chief Buckman, you actually came up and testified on Capitol Hill during the hearings when we created it. So it's something you and I are familiar with, back from the late 90s. Then post 9/11, there was a need to improve firefighter staffing. So in 2003, Congress created the SAFER Grant Program, which, as you know, the funding can be used either to hire career firefighters or also used for volunteer departments for recruitment and retention programs. And of course, the VCOS has been a leader in a lot of really innovative programs for leadership and recruitment and retention through the SAFER Grant Program. Okay, so every year Congress appropriates money for the AFG and SAFER Grant programs. I think you all know we go through the application process, and then for AFG, it's it's like 1 year money, and then so basically, you get the award, you buy the equipment or the training that you need, you put it in the FEMA, and they pay you. SAFER is a little bit different. The department, especially for career and volunteer recruitment and retention, the fire department incurs expenses, then goes back to FEMA and says, would you please pay us back? And then especially like for the SAFER grant programs, basically it's like a 3-year program. So
let me interrupt you a minute, Ken. And just for our attendees, people who are watching this, they have a hard time giving away all of the money. We don't get enough applications for the money. So if you're on here and listening, and when this gets restored, I believe it will be restored. Start applying. Figure out what it is you need and get assistance. Now, it's not easy. Nobody just gives you money, say, well, give me $50,000. They'll just write you a check. No, you got to go, as Ken said, go through the application process and what's important in the application process is the narrative. It's not about the boxes. As a person who's done grant reviews before, telling us, the people reviewing it, just like you, fire chiefs, former fire chiefs, it's not reviewed by bureaucrats. It's reviewed by us. Tell us why you need it and why you can't afford it. An example, a volunteer fire department has a $25,000 budget who has air packs that are 20 years old. 6 air packs cost more than $25,000. There's no way they could replace those air packs. Do they need to be replaced? Absolutely. So understand this money is important to us, in my opinion. We, so work to get an application done. Talk to somebody who's done it before. Sorry to interrupt you with that, Ken, but
No problem, Chief. Just one thing. So I think where we end up seeing a need for more applications is maybe for the volunteer recruitment or retention program. For both AFG and SAFER last year, there were, for each program, there were $3 billion in requested federal funds. And Congress only appropriates about $324 million for each program.
sorry.
So,
thanks for correcting me.
So that's no problem. So the real big thing, first of all, is obviously for recruitment or retention. If you're a volunteer accommodation department, there's really some opportunities to apply for that money. But more importantly, it's really important to talk to your members of Congress about the importance of appropriating more funds for the AFG and SAFER programs, because you can see, there's a huge demand, and Congress just hasn't been appropriating money to meet that demand. So we've run into some issues with the beginning of the Trump administration. Fire departments, well, I guess, first of all, for the fiscal year 2004 AFG funds, so like I said, it was roughly about $324 million. The application period has gone through. People submitted their applications. I think they've gone through and done the peer review, but we haven't actually seen the awards come out yet. For the fiscal year 24 SAFER and fire prevention and safety grant programs, we expected the application period to start in March. Obviously, we're getting to the end of March, so we have not seen the application period start. So that's something which we'll be focusing on, is trying to figure out why the application period hasn't opened up yet. And I'll get to probably some of the reasons behind that in a couple of seconds. For fiscal year 23 and earlier, departments have been submitting their requests, especially for SAFER funding. Departments have been submitting the requests to get paid, and then they were not getting paid. So we reached out to FEMA in early January, February, and said, hey, how come, what's the delay? And basically, there's a couple different things. First off, I think you saw that President Trump has issued a number of executive orders, and this is where that earlier conversation fits in. One is basically, he said that the federal government is no longer going to be funding DEI training, both within the federal government, and then also by other, they're not going to pay organizations to do DEI training. And then the second part was he also issued a executive order regarding sanctuary cities. So basically, he doesn't want the federal government to be giving money to sanctuary cities. And those are cities which claim that they are not going to help ICE, the Federal Immigration Service. They're not going to help ICE as they go through and try to detain illegal immigrants or undocumented undocumented people, depending on which terminology you prefer. So anyhow, there's been a huge fight over the years between the federal government and the sanctuary cities, and President Trump has announced basically he doesn't want funding to go to sanctuary cities. So basically, what we had been told by FEMA back in February was, due to the president's executive orders regarding DEI, they were going to be going through a manual review of all the requests for disbursements. I think you saw at the end of February, FEMA actually put out a notice where they said they were going to go through and review FEMA grants for both to take a look at how the money was being spent, who the subcontractors were, and things like that. And we've been told basically it would take about 30 days for them to actually go through and start processing these, to do the review and start processing these disbursements. So I know Chief Buckman, I talked to you about this in the VCOS board probably about three or 4 weeks ago. We did kind of get to the 30-day mark where people started contacting us saying, I waited 30 days and I have not actually seen my money from FEMA yet. So we did actually follow up with FEMA and said, hey, what's going on? And basically, FEMA was looking at how to do the manual reviews, but there was a new set of reviews being dropped on top of DHS and FEMA. And basically, they wanted to go through and do reviews regarding these sanctuary city funding. So FEMA was waiting for DHS to issue a guidance on how to do the sanctuary cities reviews. That actually was just signed this week. And basically what DHS and FEMA have decided is there's going to be 3 sets of programs or 3 categories of programs that they're going to be using for the sanctuary city review. So there's the green category, which means the funding doesn't really go to sanctuary cities and there's really no nexus to the immigration discussion. There's the yellow, where FEMA needs to take a look at the program in more detail, but any requests for disbursements will be submitted up to main DHS for review, and then DHS will decide if they want to make payments. And then there's the red, and the red is basically FEMA will send any requests for disbursements up to DHS to review, and they'll be reviewing the grant programs to see if they have to put further conditions on the grants, because red money is categorized as actually being related to the immigration discussion, and then also the money may go to sanctuary cities. The good news.
I was going to say, we got a couple questions for you.
Yep. Let me get through this because this will help everybody. So the good news is in the green programs, the green category is AFG, SAFER, the Fire Prevention and Safety grants, the National Fire Academies grants, like the State Fire Training grants, even USAR funding is all in the green category. So the good news is FEMA and DHS have said they don't need to do that screening, but they still are going through and doing this manual review of all these grants, Fire, SAFER, USFA, National Fire Academy grants. They're going to go through all those to make sure that the grants are not, none of the funding is going for DEI or anything related to climate change or anything like that. So there was a delay. We had thought that they were going through the manual review and that people will start getting paid within 30 days. But everything got held up because of the sanctuary city review. Now FEMA has been told for AFG and SAFER, they do not need to do the sanctuary city review, so they just need to do this manual review. So at this point, it seems like the clock has restarted. They're going to do these reviews, and once they decide on their disbursement and that they're going to make the payment, then it looks like FEMA has 30 days to actually pay you. So I think we're just taking this, like, for lack of a better word, 1 month at a time. FEMA said they're going to try to move quickly on the Fire and SAFER payments. We'll kind of see where we are. It's getting towards end of April, so probably getting towards the beginning of April. So probably towards the end of April, I think we're going to see if they start paying people out. In which case, we're going to have to go back and talk to them some more about actually getting fire departments the money that they're owed.
Well, okay, so a very interesting topic and a very complicated process. So one of the questions is, volunteer department was awarded a 2023 grant for fire hose. They've not yet purchased the equipment, so they're asking, in light of the uncertainty in Washington, should they proceed? Should they wait? What should they do? Any advice there?
Yeah, so the thing I would recommend at this point is just calling the AFG program office and saying, okay, I've got this grant. Obviously you guys have awarded me the grant, so can I go ahead and start making my purchases? And I guess the key part too with that is, if FEMA has already sent you the money, you can spend it. Where you get in the weird stuff is like the SAFER grant program, where the department incurs the expenses, and then they have to go back to FEMA and ask them to pay them to basically reimburse them for their expenses under the grant. So, but if you got a check in the mail from the feds, spend it as quickly as possible.
All right. And so you mentioned DEI issues and some of the challenges, executive orders there. Do you know anything about whether the IFC will maintain the IDELT program?
That is a discussion which is, I think, is probably best raised with the IFC board. I know they're going through looking at a number of different programs that we have, but at this point, the IFC board really are the people to talk to about that. They're the decision makers on that question. Yep.
All right. And if you need, the president's email address, or you can probably look him up on the website and just send him a question. I'm sure Josh will answer you. So I do want to correct, or make sure to reinforce that I was wrong in that we get more applications than we have money, except maybe for the safer program. So I just want to make sure that's reinforced, that what I said was incorrect. So do you think AFG will be restored to where they will actually release the 2024 grant cycle?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, they've got the applications, they've gone for peer review, so now we're just asking them, waiting for them to make the awards. At this point, it seems like FEMA has to go through this giant review process, but the money has been appropriated, so thus they pretty much do have to at some point start making award notifications. When that'll be, obviously we're keeping our eyes on all that. Mm-hmm.
But we would recommend that you contact your local or your United States congresspersons, both representatives and senators, and encourage them to encourage the powers to be, whoever that might be, to release that. And and John just asked a question. That was the next topic on our list. Was what about the National Fire Academy? I know that they've hired back the people that they laid off, or they supposedly did. And so the question is, do you see the National Fire Academy or the Center for Domestic Preparedness opening again?
Well, first on the fire grant and safer grant issue, Chief, I just want to reinforce what you said. If you are a fire department that is expecting a payment through the safer grant program, or you've been told you've received an AFG award, but you haven't received any of the money, you definitely should be on a call with your representatives and your senators, especially the Republicans, because they're the ones who have the most influence in Congress. They're the ones who have the most influence with the White House today. I mean, obviously, the White House wants to, work with the Republicans. At one point, they laid off, and the DOJ had laid off a number of the staff who worked on the World Trade Center health program. The New York delegation obviously, was very concerned by that. They actually signed a joint letter. The Republicans in the New York congressional delegation signed a letter and also contacted the White House. And actually, the White House made the DOJ and the Department of HHS rehire those people. So if you're owed money, call your Republican congressman, call your Republican senators, and tell them your problem, and then ask them to go contact the White House, and that'll put pressure on DHS and FEMA to get your money out the door to you faster. And that goes with the Fire Academy too. Basically, the way, and again, none of this stuff is really transparent, but what we're surmising is that the DOJ is using artificial intelligence. They basically pull in anything that they think is DEI related in terms of like federal training or websites. And what you've seen is some stuff, I think most notoriously, DOD was told they were supposed to take down the webpage of the Enola Gay, the airplane that dropped the nuclear bomb on Hiroshima, just because the DOJ, kind of checked the box that they thought that was DEI related because it's the Enola Gay. We think that may be what happened with the Fire Academy. They may have looked at some of the classes that they were doing at the Fire Academy. Some of them were obviously on, recruiting a diverse workforce. And then so basically NFA was told, okay, we're going to shut you down. We're going to review your curricula and make sure it aligns with the priorities of the Trump administration. And my understanding is they're going through that process right now. The IFC does on our website. We actually have a legislative action campaign where you can just reach out to your members of Congress and ask them to reopen the Fire Academy. It really just takes a couple seconds. You literally just type in your name, your address. We already have a pre-written message. And then what the system does is basically connects your address to the proper senators and representative. and it sends a preset notice to the member of Congress saying, please reopen the fire academy. So it takes less than 5 minutes. We've had really good turnout. I think we've had about 1,000 people at least on there. So we definitely urge two things. One is definitely use our voter voice campaign. It takes a couple of seconds. If you actually have a member of Congress, be sure that you're close with, like literally call them, call their chiefs of staff, even in a district, if it doesn't cost, because it doesn't cost you any money calling them. And let them know that you're concerned about the fire academy being closed. If you've taken classes there, let them know what classes you've taken, why they're important for fire service executive development, or even what's new in hazmat training or arson investigation. And just tell them they need to reopen the fire academy, because it's only with the constant pressure from us especially on the Republican members of Congress, and them putting pressure on the White House, that we're going to make sure that this fire academy gets reopened.
All right. So I guess the answer is hopefully yes, they'll get both those places open the next couple months. But again, it's an action item here. Ken just told you, go look at the IFC's website and send a letter, send an email to your representatives, and it's up to us to help make that happen. Going back to our original question, Ken, or not original, but one of from about the volunteer fire department who had the grant for hose. And it's probably a general question is, should someone who's received an award for 2023 notice, should they be concerned that FEMA might not honor that award?
I talk to FEMA almost every day. They've made it clear that they are not putting a hold on the AFG grants or the SAFER grants. They do have to go through some type of review, but they have told us that they will be making those payments. Now, again, probably the best thing, if you don't have the money from FEMA right now, you definitely should call back to them and say, okay, you all have said that I've gotten this award. I need to go buy this hose. When can I go buy the hose? And then are you going to send a check to me first, or do I have to ask for reimbursement? So I would just talk to the AFG office and get clear direction about how to go forward. That way you're not stuck, kind of holding the bill for a couple months.
All right, good. Well, the United States Fire Administration, many in the fire service, we know it exists, but we don't really know what they do. Maybe give us a couple shortened version of what USFA does, and then how you think this is going to impact them.
Yep. Thanks, Chief. Yeah. So USFA, it was created in 1974. It was created out of the America Burning Act. It was actually a focus by the Nixon administration on reducing fire casualties and property loss. USFA, there's a couple different parts to it. The big thing that we know it for, obviously, is the National Fire Academy, which is we refer to kind of as like the Naval War College of the fire service. It's where fire service leaders go to learn about emerging issues and learn how to better manage their fire departments. Obviously, they have the Executive Fire Officer program there. They also do teaching on emerging issues from like hazmat response, arson investigation, how to manage an EMS system. They also have a data collection section, which is very important. For years, they had the National Fire Incident Reporting System, which was supposed to track the number of fires across the country. Dr. Maura Merrill is now, when she was U.S. Fire Administrator, she actually moved to modernize the program to create NIOSH, the National Emergency Response Information System. That actually is an all-hazard system. It's in the process of being developed and rolled out. So this data component is really important because we'll get a real-time picture of the fire problem across the country, everything from wildland fires to EMS response to hazmat incidents to, structural fires. And then obviously, I think a number of you all probably know the important role that they play in fire prevention. There's a number of different programs that they do that fire departments can just download to do fire prevention in their communities.
Well, it's one of those things. USFA is sort of one of those things that's sort of been in the background, but influencing us. When you look at data collection, and Dr. Lori Moore Merrill, before she became the fire administrator, was beating us up, and I mean beating us, the fire service. Like, if you ask the FBI director on the Tuesday morning at
Mhm.
9 a.m. how many murders occurred in the United States yesterday, he or she could give that answer to the President of the United States.
Mhm.
If the President of the United States was to ask the fire administrator, how many structure fires did we have yesterday, she could not give that an answer at that time. And that's part of our problem in the fire service. We don't have data. We don't have data to prove it. We are emotional. We save lives. Well, how many lives do we save? So I think that the nearest software. I've known several people who've been part of the beta testing. It will help us get better data, and you won't. Most firefighters took the easy way out and clicked a box that said something. Well, I don't have to go do 74 other boxes, and so it's like the biggest cause of a fire was unknown,
Mhm.
because if you put electrical in there, then you had to determine what the electrical appliance was, the outlet was, the type of wire. And so we took the lazy way out. And we never did anything with that data anyway. So I think that is a big thing USFA is doing for us, is
Mhm.
trying to get data. They created the Fire Service One Voice program. And I know you're familiar with that, Ken, but maybe you want to explain a little bit about that?
Yeah, basically, this comes from years ago. Uh, the fire groups met with James Lee Witt, the FEMA administrator under President Clinton. And I guess they didn't agree. So basically, Director Witt told them that if they didn't get on the same page, no one would ever listen to them. So over the years, both they created Congressman Kurt Weldon created the Congressional Fire Services Institute to better educate Congress on fire service issues, and a part of that was CFSI getting all the fire groups together through their National Advisory Committee to kind of get everyone on the same page through the resolutions. So the groups have been moving, kind of trying to get on one page over the years, so that way we'd have a unified voice up on Capitol Hill. And then Dr. Mormero really led the charge on that. She, made it kind of a common fire service discussion, the one voice, getting all the fire groups to agree on different issues, and then try to, speak with a unified voice. And then, she really took it nationwide through a number of different whistle stop tours through the East Coast, West Coast, and Central U.S., talking about fire prevention and getting the fire service all to speak with one voice.
And understand that just because it says Fire Service One Voice, it doesn't mean that we all have to agree.
Mm-hmm.
But if we disagree, then we should be quiet and let that issue go ahead. So it's not like we're fighting amongst, not just amongst ourselves, but we're fighting with other people in our message. And most of the issues, there may be an organization that disagrees a little bit. Well, a little bit is better than a lot. And so it's so important for the future of the fire service that we continue on with this Fire Service One Voice program. So if you, excuse me, if you've ever had a line of duty death in your department, or even know somebody that did, in many cases, NIOSH will offer, they request to come in and do an investigation and determine cause, and they write a report. And NIOSH, I think NIOSH was another one of those programs through an executive order that was stopped. So maybe explain a little bit about that, Ken, and the benefits to the fire service, and what do you think that will happen with that?
Yeah, Chief, you're exactly right. NIOSH, which is actually part of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, does have a program that investigates firefighter fatalities. They're really good reports. If you ever have a chance to read them, they really go into great detail. They're kind of like the NTSB version of, unfortunately, why a firefighter ended up suffering a line of duty death. So they're very helpful. They're very influential. What happened was, getting back to the Doge and the virtues of artificial intelligence, and I mean it sarcastically, the Doge basically went to the Office of Personnel Management and said, okay, give us the list of every agency and everybody who'd been hired within the last 2 years, and we're going to eliminate them. And so what we had was probably late January, early February, basically the different agencies went to all they called them either temporary or new hires, or probationary hires. Basically, they laid off all those people. So I know that unfortunately the NIOSH line of duty death investigators. A number of them were laid off because they had been hired within the last 2 years. I know it was actually really frustrating for them because the letter they got said you're not meeting performance criteria, and so you're being laid off. But the investigators would say like, "Hey, I've got my annual evaluation, and it says I'm doing a great job, so I'm not really sure why I'm getting laid off here." Basically, it was an attempt by the government to basically, it was an attempt by President Trump and Elon Musk to shrink the government workforce. And so they just kind of wiped out everybody who'd been hired within the last 2 years. There were some opportunities for the agency to push back for exemptions. So hopefully at this point, Chief Black, who's the Deputy U.S. Fire Administrator, she is currently still working at USFA, so that's good news. Then hopefully they exempted her. But yeah, so that's what happened. I guess there's two also things. Sorry for being a little bit long, but the judges, this went to court. The court told the Trump administration, you didn't follow proper procedure for laying these people off, so you have to reinstate them. So a lot of them are right now just on administrative leave. They're not getting their jobs back. They're just getting paid until this thing works its way through the courts, and then in which case the Trump administration probably intends to lay them off. Also, Secretary Robert Kennedy Jr. just announced yesterday he wants to have another 20,000 people laid off over at HHS, which also covers CDC and NIOSH. So that would be like a quarter of the workforce. So we're gonna have to see kind of how that works out. But the federal government the federal workforce has been slashed, and they're looking at doing across the board slashes even more. So that will end up affecting programs like the NIOSH line of duty death investigations.
Well, that's probably that's bad news. I mean, so it's not hopeful. I'm just going to say it that way. And so it's up to us, but they are great training tools. Mm-hmm. Yeah, as Ken said, if you haven't read one, go read them. They're great training tools so that we don't make the same mistakes that we did that ended up killing a firefighter in an event similar to that. I know in my experience as state fire academy director, we had NIOSH involved in a couple of line of duty deaths, and it was good. And they were friendly. They wrote some things in a report that were challenging, but it was pretty much like you said. It is the report that they write on a plane crash, and so it's very, very helpful. So that's again going to be up to us. If we really think that's important, you need to call your congressman, write them, and get them on board doing something about it. Mm-hmm. A brand new program, which again it goes back to that 2-year thing, is the Firefighter Cancer Registry Program. Mm-hmm. I know I mentioned that in a slide. That is so important to the fire service. Again, it's about data. Anything on? Well, I got a question. So before we go there, FEMA has fired more than 200 employees in February, and more expected to be laid off. Won't this affect the FEMA review of the currently approved and unpaid grants?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure exactly everybody who's laid off, and I don't know how many people were laid off in the FEMA grants office. So I'd be cautious about making any speculation. But obviously, if the Trump administration keeps clipping the federal workforce, there's less people to do the work, which would cause a problem.
Yeah. And then again, another comment about the NIOSH LODD. It says seems like they may be wanting to push that to the states to do. Any idea about that?
No, at this point, we'll have to see. But the short term, when they laid those people off, I'm pretty sure that a lot of the people who were making the decisions had no idea that there was a NIOSH line of duty death investigation effort. So it was just literally some computer, and the DOJ people are basically a bunch of 19 or 20-year-olds. So the decisions were being made by people who didn't understand ramifications of what they were doing.
So going back to the cancer registry thing is that again, one of those things just got started and hopefully was going to see some benefit 5 years down the road. Any ideas on if they're going to bring that back? Well,
the good news is the cancer registry is still there and staffed. they did end up laying off some of the people they'd recently hired, which I think were probably focused more on doing outreach. But I mean, this is again a case where the fire service needs to be aggressive about owning their programs. There's 1.1 million firefighters. There's not 1.1 million people logged into and registered with the Firefighter Cancer Registry. What ended up happening is people will do a cost benefit analysis. They'll say like, okay, we're putting $5.5 million per year into the Firefighter Cancer Registry. We only have like, a couple 100,000 people registered. Is the federal taxpayer getting the dollar benefit that the federal taxpayer is getting the benefits they need for the dollars they're investing. So I think the more that firefighters input their data into the Firefighter Cancer Registry, the more it'll show how important it is to the fire service. And then also with more people putting their information into the database, then researchers will get better research out of it, and we'll be able to show, hey, this is a good use of federal money because, we've got, 900,000 people who have now put their information into the Firefighter Cancer Registry. And here's all the great research that we've got out of it because we can do a large scale quantitative analysis. And don't forget with these guys too, they're big fans of AI and using quantitative analysis. So the more data that you put into that Firefighter Cancer Registry, the more researchers can speak Elon Musk's language by talking about using AI and quantitative analysis to pull important findings out of the registry. So if a lot of people put their information into it, we can make this a really good news story for the fire service from the Trump administration's perspective. But we have to do it.
You mentioned, a while ago you mentioned Donna Black, former IFC president, who's now the deputy director. And you talk about the Firefighter Cancer Registry. The fire service doesn't blow our own horn. That's part of the problem. We should have celebrated big time when Donna Black got appointed as the deputy administrator, and we didn't. It was a couple notices put out, but that's a big deal. It was one of our own who is second in command, and is not there based upon political position. We'll get through several administrations, and then just like on the cancer registry, we don't blow our own horn about how important that is. So the fire service, you've got to start doing that a little bit more. I know we do our job. We go save a life and we go, I'm just doing my job. Yes, you are, but you save lives. You save lives by having a cancer registry because it will tell us in the future what is the most prevalent form of cancer a firefighter, male or female, will contract. And there are differences. I know you all know there's difference between male and females, but there's also differences between male and female cancer. So but we need that data. You just can't say, well, John Buckman said that, so it must be true. I can't prove that quantitatively or qualitatively. It's just my opinion. So, but you got into research just a little bit, Ken, and there's two parts to research, in my opinion. There is the fire suppression, the operations part of research, and then the health and wellness part of research. So maybe let's talk a little bit about the operations research and what that is and how likely we are that we can get that refunded.
Chief, you talking about like the fire prevention and safety grants?
Yes. Well, and then where we fund basement fires and strategy and tactics kind of training or kind of research, that sort of thing.
Yeah. For that, there's a number of different things. Over the years, the Fire Prevention and Safety Grant Program has funded a number of different research projects into how to more effectively fight structural fires. There was the firefighter high-rise project where they looked at staffing for responding to high-rise fires. Also, I know the Fire Service Research Institute is doing a lot of research today, not only about how to respond to basement fires and things like that, but also, all these emerging technologies that are out there, like lithium batteries. How do you respond when you have a Tesla on fire? As we know, you're dumping a lot of water on it, and even then, this is an internal chemical reaction that may not resolve it. You may have to wait. We have issues of the charging components in e-bikes and the lithium batteries. When you charge them, if they overcharge, they can explode. Down the road, we're looking at like hydrogen fuels. So there's this is an important time in the fire service to be doing that type of research. So again, that shows the importance of the fire prevention and safety grants, is finding out what tactics work for dealing with these new types of like alternative energies that are out there.
Well, again, I know that Firefighter Safety Research Institute, I sometimes have a hard time with that name.
Yeah.
They have lots of great training out there that is on virtual online that you can use in your large department, small department, to help educate and inform firefighters that they may or may not get for a long time. The other thing is the National Fallen Firefighters Foundation has grants to do some of the same kind of training. So I encourage you to go to both of those websites and look at that training material, use it. But then, as he just said, it's part of the grant process. We need to tell them how important this is to helping our firefighters be safer, save their lives as well as saving other people's lives. Mm-hmm. So that's important. So the health and wellness comes under the same kind of grants, and I think that's something that is important to us as well. Any ideas about what that is and how that helps us?
Yeah, Chief. Just a lot of different things, and that's where like the NIOSH line of duty death investigations are important. Now we've stood up the firefighter cancer registry. Now getting more data into there so the researchers can start actually doing some great research from it. The fire prevention and safety grants over the years have done a number of different studies into cancer research. There's that whole University of Arizona firefighter cohort that they're going through doing cancer research. I think it's funded by some of the federal agencies. So, there's a huge fire service research portfolio that sometimes maybe members of Congress don't focus on as much. So it's helpful if they hear from you about the importance of those programs.
All right. So we're coming to the end. We did about 52 minutes. We did good, Ken. Ken, thank you very much.
Thanks,
any questions or comments from the group that's out there? I'm just give them a few seconds and or give you, Ken, an opportunity. What didn't I ask you about that you think is important as it relates to what's going on in Washington, D.C.?
Chief, the big thing I want to do is make clear two things. One is the fire chief is the most trusted voice in their community. Members of Congress really care what you have to say. And then two, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. So much like I'm pestering FEMA probably about once a day to find out what's going on with the fire grants and the AFG and the AFG and SAFER grants and the Fire Academy, it's really helpful that you make a point of, it's great if you showed up at the fire service dinner. We really appreciate it. But make sure once a month practically at this point that you're pestering your members of Congress, and especially, like I said earlier, the Republicans are important. The Democrats, it's helpful too. Definitely they tend to be a little bit more partial and supportive of our issues. But in any case, especially if you're owed money, you should be on the phone contacting your member of Congress and senators asking where your money is. And then also just make it a point, until the Fire Academy is open, make sure that you're bugging them every couple days or weeks saying, how come it's not open yet? Because if you don't take
one fire chief had made 5 phone calls to get his money.
Yep. Good. Well, that's what you have to do. Yep.
Anything else that we didn't talk about that you think is important?
I think that's it. But I appreciate everybody's time today.
All right. So I got a question. Are there programs with the IFC offers to teach newer leaders how to engage with their federal and state legislation?
We've got some documents over the years, but honestly, it's actually really easy. The short story is it's either you just get on your phone and call the representative's office, and we do have our hot sheet which we update once a month, and then there's got all of our major initiatives for that month. So it's all the major bills, funding for the Fire and Safer Grant Program. We get into things like PSOB for the families of cancer-related line of duty deaths. But all of our major issues are up there, making sure that the Federal FirstNet Authority stays around and isn't terminated in 2027. So all you need to really do is download that document, or in this case, if you're actually owed money by the feds, call your congressional office, either through the House or Senate website, and then ask them, ask to talk to the congressional staff and tell them you want your money.
I think the big part to answer that question is it's really simple. Ken just said it: call, communicate, write letters, send email, go to their public meetings, ask them questions. If you just call them for one topic, they're going to go, well, hey, just get that done, get them over with. But it is about a relationship. It's not just about once in a blue moon calling up, going and griping at them, going, hey, you haven't done this for me today. They don't want to hear from that person. And they don't like hearing from the guy who calls 100 times a month either.
Mm-hmm.
But there is a balance there. But as Ken said, if you're owed money, make the phone calls. They owe you money. They should be paying you. But it is about relationships, about communications, and use all the communications tools you have. I would say, and Ken may agree or disagree, yes, the elected person is important, but it's the chief of staff that actually influences that elected official, because they're hearing a little bit more than the elected official. The elected official might be a little bit insulated just because of their position and where they are. So I would encourage you to look for that chief of staff or that number 2 or 3 person as well. I don't know if you agree with that, Ken, or not.
Yeah, Chief Buckman, you're exactly right. Especially, there's a person in every state or district for the senators and representatives. And it's a local phone call. You can call, get to know that person well, catch them up for coffee or invite them to the fire station, that type of thing. But build a relationship with them, because every day the member of Congress calls back to the state and goes, what's new? And they definitely will appreciate hearing, from their local guys like, hey, the fire department's up in arms because of X, Y, and Z.
Yeah. It was sort of funny when we had a congressman here, Brad Ellsworth, who was the sheriff, and I was a fire chief. So we had a great relationship. So he went there. So I went to D.C. for something, and I had a meeting with him in his office. And he said, you'd be amazed. I get more phone calls from out of Indiana people than I get from Indiana people.
Yep.
And I thought, well, how sad is that? But that's the way it is. They get those phone calls. Well, that's who they start to listen to. And so, again, we should have more phone calls from us than from people outside of the district or even the state of Indiana, or your state in particular. So, well, I think we've come to the end here. I don't see any more questions. I appreciate the people who came into the chat. Don't forget that this program is recorded. I hope that it's informative enough that you might share that with some other fire chiefs. I know for me, it was informative. A couple of things that I did not know about. I'm making notes. I told Ken, when I look down for a little bit, it's not that I'm ignoring him. I'm making notes, because if I don't write it down, I'll forget it. And so, Ken, any closing comments from you?
No, thanks, Chief Buckman, and thanks for everybody who tuned in today. I really appreciate your time, and hopefully this will energize some of you all to contact your members of Congress and tell them they need to get on it.
Ken, are you willing? I think we did it on the first slide, but are you willing to share your email address?
Sure. It's at KLA, S as in Sam, ALA at IAFC.org.
And it's ALA, not ALLA.
Exactly. Yeah. Thanks, Chief.
Well, because I've made that mistake. It's like, he doesn't answer me.
Yeah,
because I typed the wrong email address in. So we got to thank you from Ellen. Great session, very informative. Thank you, Ellen. Appreciate that. So with that, I'm going to log off here. We're going to close this thing out. Sherry, our webinar master, will be shutting it down. Thank you all very much for attending today, and those who are watching it on video or online, thank you as well. May everybody have a safe day, and God bless each and every one of you. Thank you.
Thank you.